You're on.
Today is March 21, 2009, and we are at Potterville, Michigan, talking with Ed Jamros. Now, Edwin Francis Jamros, and his last name is spelled Jamros. He is a World War II veteran, served in the U.S. Coast Guard. And Ed was born May 1, 1918 at Detroit, Michigan. And he lives at 5786 East Gresham, Gresham Highway, Potterville, Michigan, zip code 48876. And my name as interviewer and as camera operator is Wallace or Wally Erickson, and that's last name is Erichsen. And I'm a volunteer working with the Veterans History Interviews for the Library of Congress, and we're doing this for Grand Valley State University, the History Department. Now, Ed, again, is a U.S. Coast Guard veteran, was an electrician's mate first class during World War II. Ed, let me start by just asking you for your full name, and I'd also like you to recite your date and place of birth.
Edwin Francis Jamros, born May 1st, 1918, in Detroit.
Okay. When did you enlist in the U.S. Coast Guard?
October 1, 1940, at 4 p.m.
Can you tell me how and why you selected the Coast Guard?
Well, I knew I had to go into the service because I had a great feeling that we were going to go to war. And so I went to the Army, and they had a 4-block long line. It was all around the old federal building in Detroit. I said, that's too long to wait to sign up for anything. So then I went to the Navy, and they had a 6-year enlistment, and I says, man, if I can't hack the Navy life, there's 6 years down the tube. So I says, nope, that's not for me. And then I went to the Marine Corps, and they had a 3-year enlistment, and there was a corporal, a recruiting officer there, and I says, how long did it take you to become corporal? He says, 3 years. I thought, 3 years at $21 a month? No way. So then I went to the Coast Guard, and that first class bosun mate there, he had a line and I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Where do I sign? That's how I got into the Coast Guard.
And where were you living at the time then, Ed, when you enlisted?
Well, I was living at the time in, I think it was Ecorse. I was working at Great Lakes Steel. And but my home was in Brighton, Michigan. But that's when I signed up, when I was living in Ecorse at a rooming house. Get your room and board, I think, for $10 a week.
Where did you go for your basic training in the Coast Guard?
Ellis Island, New York City. That's where the immigrants used to come in.
And how long was basic training, and what did you do there?
Well, we learned how to march. I think basic training was 2 months or 3. I forgot which it is now. But we learned how to march, how to do bout faces, how to handle a firearm, and learn how the military code of ethics, whatever you want to call it. And that was about it, to learn how to say yes sir, no sir, jump when they told you to jump.
And were you in basic training when you were assigned to the garbage detail?
Yeah, we had to have 2 weeks of kitchen duty, and I happened to get the garbage detail, which lasted a half hour every meal. We had to take 2 or 3 garbage cans full put them on a push cart, take it out to the seawall and dump it. And then the gulls would come in. They were waiting for you. And the first class bosun mate we had in charge of us, he says, did you ever tie a couple pieces of meat with a long string between them? I says, no. He said, do it sometime, but he said, don't get caught. So we did. It was fun to watch those two gulls fighting over they each had a piece of meat in their mouth and the string would hold them together. It was really funny. We only did it once.
And do you remember your instructors or your drill instructors from basic training?
Well, I can't remember. I know they were first class bosun mates. That's all I can remember. But I could not keep in step with everybody else was in step except me. And I used to run around the parade grounds a few times with my rifle over my head, 2 or 3 laps. The last time I had to run 5. I still couldn't keep in step. Always out of step.
Well, how did you get through basic training then?
Well, I got through. Well, because they needed the bodies. They weren't going to kick me out because I couldn't march.
Now, Ed, what war did you serve in?
I served in, well, I was in both theaters. I served mainly in the European theater. We made the North African invasion, the Sicily invasion, and the 2 into Italy. I only got 1 star for that.
This was World War II then,
Yeah,
right?
World War II. And we also made a trip to Australia. We left New York with green soldiers, you know, they just out of basic. Took them to Panama to learn how to fight in the jungle. And they cleaned all the soldiers in Panama out, took them to Australia. And they ended up at Brisbane, and they were part of MacArthur's push north.
Okay. Let me ask you, let's go back to after your graduation from basic training. Where did you serve immediately after basic training at Ellis Island?
I didn't know what I really wanted to do at that time, so I asked our CEO COO I should say, can I stay around till if something comes up I like? He says, sure. So I was in the armory cleaning up, keeping the rifles clean and the pistols clean, the 45 pistols. And one day he called me in his office. He says, I got a good position for you ashore. I said, what's that? He says, guard duty at the captain of the port's office. He said, it's good duty. I said, thank you, I'll take it. So I was at the captain of the port's office. And at the time, any foreign country that had a vessel in the United States, if Germany invaded it, the Americans went in and seized the vessel in New York port. That's where we were stationed. And sometimes the newspapers were waiting for the Coast Guard to get there to seize the ship. So I was questioned by my chief bosun mate, by the commander of the base. The FBI came in and questioned me because they thought I was the one giving this out because I was always on duty when this was happening. Coincidence, but you know, it's happened. So one night, it was a Yugoslavian ship they were going to take over, and the yeoman from the tug that would carry these people that seized the ship, he came in and I heard him talking on the phone. Well, do I get my $5 for this news tip? Like I always do. Oh, the green light turned on in my head. I never said a word to him. Next morning when my chief came in, I told him what had happened the night before. And he says, okay. Then I had to talk to the captain again. Then the FBI came in again. They talked to me again, and I had to go over everything with them real. So everything was the same. They all compared notes, I think, because I knew what had happened. And well, the guy never, I don't know what he got, whatever happened to him, but he was on the tug when I left the base. So I guess he only got disciplined somehow or other. That was my big thing at the base there. Oh, I could tell you about one night I had midnight to 4 duty, and midnight to 8 rather, and I'm standing outside, and here's a fat fella comes up to me, And he says, "Sailor, you want a boy?" I says, "No, I don't want a boy." "Sailor, you want a boy?" I says, "No." "Sailor, come with me." And he started putting his hand on me while I had a billy club. And I hit him right alongside the neck on the shoulder. And I think I kind of hurt him a little bit because I heard something crack. That was the end of that. Yeah, when I was at the captain of the port's office, I didn't think war was going to start so quick. But my wife worked for Chicago Matic Tool Company, and the home office was in New York City. And her father was foreman of the heat treat department there, so he had a pull. And they arranged for her, if she went to New York to she could get a job there, and then I could have every third night together. Because she could have found a flat somewhere to live in, and we'd had a nice little life for a while. But I'm thinking it was Labor Day, but I'm not sure if it was, when she came out to stay, and I got transferred.
Now, Ed, had you gotten married earlier that same year?
Oh yeah, we got married on the 23rd of May, 1941.
Okay.
And
So then she came out in about October, was that?
yeah, something like that. Maybe it was Labor Day, but looking at my discharge, something about, I think I read in July, but that's the wrong date, in my mind.
Okay.
It was
Anyway,
a
she came
holiday.
out to visit you anyway then.
Yeah, it was a holiday week, and I'm thinking Labor Day. That'd be in September,
Okay.
because I went on the Dickman in that same month. I got transferred that weekend. I was supposed to get off, and something happened, and I don't know, I can't remember what it was, but I couldn't get off that weekend. And so my wife Virginia went up to New Haven, Connecticut to stay with my aunt up there and uncle.
What were their names, Ed?
Their name was Ken and Joe Latham. And they all went to a beer garden. My wife didn't drink, but there was 5 of them, 2 couples and her. And they all got drunk, and my aunt drove home, and she drove everywhere but in the road and didn't get a ticket. Next morning she says, "Did I drive in the road much?" And Virginia says, "No, you was on the media most of the time." Anyways, she got home without wrecking the car. So then, when she came back to New York, I gave her a kiss and says, "I'm aboard ship." And that's how I started in my ship cruise.
And where did Virginia go then?
She went back home,
To Detroit then?
back to her folks, and then she got a job at Chrysler ammunition factory.
Okay. And where were you assigned then at that point? Ed? When were you assigned to the ship then?
I was assigned as an apprentice electrician. And how it all come about is I had my 3 months were in where I could get an advancement, and I said to my bosun mate, chief bosun mate, who was a real good Swede, he wanted me to get advanced as quick as I could, so I want to become an electrician. He said, "Okay, we're up to personnel." Well, we don't have any slots for electricians here in apprentices. 3 days later, I'm transferred to the Dickman as an apprentice electrician.
What was the name of the ship again?
USS Joseph Dickman, APA 13. And the chief electrician said to me, "How come you got assigned as an electrician, apprentice electrician?" I said, "Darn if I know, Chief." I wasn't going to tell him what I had done before. So I knew a little bit about electricity because we had electricity on the farm in 1935. I had to wire the barn and everything, the house. So that's how I got on board.
Where did you initially go? Did you initially sail with the Dickman somewhere? Or?
Oh, well, our first real voyage was, we made a shakedown cruise out into the ocean. Then we came back in. Then we had a few more repairs. Then we set sail and we were headed for Nova Scotia. We got up there, and I think it was the first part of November.
Do you remember what port you went into?
Huh?
Do you remember what port in Nova Scotia?
Scotia.
Was it Halifax or?
No, it was Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Okay.
Port. I know some of the officers were concerned about the high tide they were supposed to have there. When they got up there, they says, don't worry about the high tide, it ain't that big here. Anyways, we took on the 18, there were 6 ships and 3 destroyer convoy. And we took on 18,000 British soldiers. They were the 18th Division, called the Queen Anne's Own. And we were taking them to points unknown, so we head for Cape Town.
South Africa.
Cape Town, South Africa. 2 days out of Cape Town, South Africa, we got mail from the destroyer that caught up to us, the 4th one. And I had a letter from my brother there that took 30 days to get there by mail. It was the V-mail. And he said, we know the Japs are coming, we're ready for them. He was stationed at Hickman Field as a mechanic he was an aircraft mechanic.
What was your brother's name again?
My brother's name was Stanley.
Okay.
And he says, we're ready for them. Ha ha ha. Then we got into Cape Town. We were treated royally there. I had shore patrol the first night, Liberty Night, and we were told we couldn't do anything only if there was American personnel involved. If there was British soldiers or British sailors, we stay out of it. Well, we had a 6'6" bobby, and there were 3 of us, and one British soldier come up and says, there's a fight in a pub down a couple blocks, short ways away. And we asked Americans, no, they're 2 British. And so the bobby went in. He came out with both of them under his arms. And he dropped them in the gutter. He picked them up and knocked their heads together. And he said, when they wake up, he said, they won't fight. So that was the end of the excursion. What I can say about the big excitement of being the shore patrol. And the next night I'm on Liberty, and there's 3 of us standing on a corner, and this lady come up to us, elegantly dressed. She says your name is Dr. So-and-so. She's a DO, the only DO in Cape Town. She said, I would like to take you boys out to Musenberg, pay your way there, give you a good meal, and pay your way back. And we all looked at each other, and you're kind of wondering what's going on here. Then she says to us, this is our way of showing you thank you for coming. She said, we do this all the time. So I looked at the other guys and I nodded, so we all went, we had a good meal. On the way back, we had a time because we had to be back at the ship at 10. The train was sabotaged, the wires were. That was an electric train. Well, we got started and we had to run to get off the train to get to the ship. We just made it by a couple minutes after, but they could see us coming, so they said, okay.
Where did you go after Cape Town then?
Then we went to Bombay, India, and there the 3 fastest ships, all these 18,000 were loaded aboard the 3 fastest ships, and they went to Singapore. 2 days after they debarked, they all surrendered. 18,000 of them.
The Japanese had overrun Malaysia at that point, is that right?
It was just such an enormous waste of life. And the funny part about it is, 6 of those people that went over on our ship came back from Japan on our same ship.
Several years later then, right?
Oh yeah, this was in 45. Now, I was already off the ship then, but I learned about it at the reunion.
How long did you stay in Bombay?
Well, we were there 2 weeks altogether. And I had shore patrol there, and we had an outlying precinct, as they called it. And the lieutenant in charge there, he took us all through the city in a lorry. He showed us the best to the worst. It was a nice, interesting trip. And that night we were assigned to the Green Hotel. That's what it was called at that time. And it was a nice place. We had supper there. And there was an officer, and he had 5 or 6 enlisted men with him. And the officer in charge of my gang says, Ed, go tell those sailors to leave. Otherwise they're going to be late. So I went up to them and I told them, I said, I got orders to tell you guys to get out of here. Otherwise you're going to be late getting back to your ships. Oh, that's all right, this officer. I said, you better leave or you're going to be taken in. I said, that's my orders. He didn't tell me that, but I told him. I knew how to persuade. So they left.
Did they leave? Okay.
Yeah, they left. The officer was there alone. He had another hour, so. But that was I learned a lot about British rule in India. I had talked with an educated Indian, an Indian man, and he was telling me what goes on under British rule. And it's like when we were at the precinct, when we were coming back, one of the subordinates come in, he says, I hit a native with my bike. Did you stop? No, he was walking in the road. And all of us Americans look at each other, you know. You hit a guy and you didn't stop? Oh, he said they could see us concerned. So the lieutenant explained to him, you hit anybody in the road, it's his fault because he's walking in the road. There wasn't any room on the sidewalk to walk because it's so crowded. That's why the Indians were so, one of the reasons they're so avid about getting the English out, getting under their own rule. But I also learned there that the sergeant in charge of a squad, they had 23 dialects in India at that time. He told us, you know. And he had to learn that guy's dialect, so that if he had to got in trouble and he had to write a ticket or do something, I could understand what he's telling me, how to write it, or how to report it.
Any other stories from Bombay, or what they now call Mumbai?
Yeah, I bought some bookends there for $2.50. They're worth about $250 now. And I had bought a commode for my mother. It had a big woven dragon on it, and I had learned earlier that if you wanted to bargain with those people, you sat and talked to them. You didn't talk price, you just talked weather, politics, and so forth. And then I learned from this guy that you could trust a Muslim's word at that time, but you couldn't trust a Hindu's word. He said, if a Muslim says, I will do it, it was good as being done, but he told the Hindu that. If the Hindu said, I'll do it, you didn't know when. You know, I mean, the difference in politics and so forth. I had a very interesting time there.
And where did you go after Bombay then?
Well, we stopped back in Cape Town and we picked up a load of graphite. And our ship was really dirty after loading all that graphite in bags. The stevedores carried it in by over their backs. And then we had to stop in some town in Brazil for fuel. And I got shore patrol there. And this was the start of Lent when they had their Mardi Gras parade. We didn't see the parade, but those ladies that carried the perfume bottles, they really squirted us sailors. We really were smelling good. And we stopped in for a cup of coffee in one of the Brazilian coffee houses, and they gave coffee in them little small cups, strong as almost to eat the spoon up. And I put a lot of sugar in mine, and there was a policeman on the other side of the room, and I took a drink of it. I put the sugar in, kind of made a face, and he said, I don't know whether he was telling me growing hair or pulling it off. That was my communication. No English, no Spanish.
But that coffee would put hair in your chest, huh?
Yeah.
How long were you in Brazil before moving on? How long were you in Brazil?
Just, I think 2 days, 2 or 3 days, fueling, that's all.
Oh, and then you still had the graphite on board?
Yeah, we still had the graphite, and then we came back to New York.
Okay. What did the United States use graphite for, do you recall?
Lubrication.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to have it for lubrication.
But it's awful messy and black and just gets all over everything, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does. It wasn't, it was chunks of graphite, but they'd rub each other and you'd get dust off of them.
So then you went back to Port of New York then?
Yeah, we went
With your
back to
cargo.
Port of New York, and that was, we got home, I think in January.
Did you get Liberty at all once you got back to New York?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We had Liberty every third day. And I was the first, well, I was the first one to get off, one of the first ones to get off the ship. Just to go make a phone call. Now that night, my wife had to be on a Saturday or Sunday night. My wife and her mother and a couple of neighbors all went to a theater to get dishes. They were giving dishes away when you come to theater those days. And I was probably ashore over 2 hours waiting for her to get home because I didn't think I could get off the ship again because once I'm off. So I waited, and when I finally talked to my wife, I said, "You just come, get into the Times Square Hotel, check in there, and I'll find you." But I said, "I don't know what's going to happen when I get back to the ship." And when I got back, the duty officer said to me, "Ed," he says, "what took you so long?" I said, "Sir," I says, "my wife was at a theater." He said, "Did you have any beer?" I said, "Sir, I don't drink." "Oh, okay, forget it." So I felt happy that, I got to say something about drinking. This is our first maneuvering off of South Carolina. This was before we went to Nova Scotia. We were learning how to debark troops for a land invasion. And it was hot in the summer, the mosquitoes were bad. And at one night, about 11 o'clock, the orderly came and got me and says, "Go to so-and-so stateroom and change the fan." So I went there and knocked, and the guy says, "Enter." And I did. I could see he was a general. It didn't dawn on me at the moment who he was. And I said, "Is that the fan you want changed, sir?" It wasn't running. He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay." So I took it down, went down the shop, got another one, put it up there and got it running for him. And I says, "Is that all right, sir, in the direction?" He said, "Yep." I start walking out. He said, "Sailor." I said, "Yes, sir." I turned around. Then I realized it was General Patton, old blood and guts himself. And he says, "Open up that sea chest." I said, "Sir?" He said, "Open up that fucking sea chest." "Yes, sir." It was full of beer, full of whiskey bottles, different brands. Some half empty, some never opened. He says, "Take any one you want, take a good long swig." I said, "Sir, I don't drink." "Well, what in the fucking kind of a sailor are you that don't drink?" I said, "Just a dry land sailor, sir." That was my encounter with General Patton.
Did he let you take the bottle?
Nope, just take a swig.
One swig was all.
Yeah, he wouldn't let me have a bottle. I'd have taken it. I'd have given it to somebody.
Share it with your friends.
Yeah. Most of them didn't drink, the friends I had.
Getting back to Port of New York after you bringing the load of graphite in, did you get leave at all to be able to come back to Michigan?
I got leave because I think I was second going out that time. But my wife and I, we rode back on the train together.
So Virginia came out to New York and
Yeah.
you were able to spend
Yeah.
time with her.
Yeah,
And then,
because we didn't know whether to leave or not right away, because
Right.
we didn't know how long the ship was going to be tied up.
where did you go after that then with the Dickman?
Let's see. That was when we took the troops out of New York, took them to Panama. The ship in front of us hit a loose mine, because we had a minefield to go through.
This was coming into Panama. I
Going
assume.
into the Bay of Panama, up on the Atlantic side. And it killed 17 sailors and soldiers and disabled the ship. Now we're 6 ships, we're down to 5. When we went through the isthmus, we left all our troops off there and picked up all those seasoned jungle troops they had there. And then we took them to Brisbane, Australia. At that time it was points unknown. Now this is really, really funny. Our food ration, our breakfast was cut down some. And so we didn't get fruit that we used to have. And I was one person who never ate too much breakfast. Because I was getting that loaf of bread at night. Anyways, so one day I went there and I was about 5 minutes late. They went down to eat breakfast. I thought I was hungry. I got some almost raw bacon and 3 pancakes, which was all good enough. And I set my tray down, I put some syrup on it. I was never one to use butter. And I said, and we got to work on this. And some guy says, take it to the exec. Up I get, took the tray up to the exec's office. He wasn't there. He was still eating in the wardroom. So I'm heading down that direction and I run into the ship's doctor. I said, Doc, are we supposed to live on this stuff? He looked at the bacon that it was raw, half raw. He says, put it in my office, sailor. I said, okay. They all knew who I was. And that was the end of that. You know, next couple days later, bang, our breakfasts were a little better. Every meal had it was just a little better quality.
Let me ask you, Ed, how many of the ship's crew, how many were on the actual crew?
At that time, there was about 320 to 350.
And then your embarked troops then would be a lot more than that.
Yeah, there was 3,000 or 4,000 of them.
Okay.
But after we went from 6 ships to 5, they were sleeping on deck at night.
Was that all the way to Brisbane then?
Yeah. Well, because they had to. There was no bunk room for them.
Mm-hmm. And did you get extra rations though for the extra embarked troops or not?
No. Oh, well, we had rations for them. But the fact though that is we had the extra. They kind of cut back on us. We didn't. Let's put it this way. If we had an orange for breakfast, we didn't get the orange.
Okay.
So, anyways, when we crossed the equator, we had a whole big time 3-day exercise. If you were a shellback, that means you've crossed the equator and been initiated.
What is the name again? A shellback?
Shellback. And of course I'd crossed in the Atlantic, so now I'm a shellback. And the captain's orders were, he says, do anything you want, as long as it's safe. Well, I was the devil, so I said the devil is in red, so I had woolen underwear, 2-piece. I went down to ship stores and got almost a quart of red ink, dyed my underwear red. Then we had this fork we made up with a wooden handle, and we had it to an electric generator, and I could shock people with it. These polywogs going up the steps I'd shock them with it.
Now the polywogs were those that had not been across the equator before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this one officer, he came up, he shoved me down when he run up so fast. He knew I was going to shock him good. But did they ever rake him over? I mean, because he pushed me down. Boy, they really cut his hair. They kind of cut his head a little bit. And then they almost drowned the poor sucker in the tank that they had to say, shellback, yeah. If you didn't say shellback, you were pushed under until you did. But that lasted for 3 days. I had to feel sorry for an old 25-year-old 25-year veteran bosun mate, chief bosun mate. He had never been across the equator. And here his apprentice seaman's whacking him because he had to climb through a 25-foot long tunnel with the water hose on the other end. You had to crawl through against the pressure of the hose. And some guy whacking you.
What was the dunk tank used for then? I can only imagine.
Well, you'd go up this platform and they had 3 barbers there and they'd cut your hair any way they wanted. They just might run across it or forward or something. And if you had short hair, they'd take it all off anyways. and then they'd dunk you in, and if you didn't say to them shellback, if you didn't want to say it, they'd almost drown you. So about the second time they pushed me under, I said, shellback.
And that ended the dunking, huh?
Yeah, that ended the ducking. Okay, you're right. You can go.
So then you continued on to Brisbane.
Yeah. Yeah, we was going all the while. We didn't stop or anything. Then we got to Brisbane, and that was a nice stop there. I bought a boomerang there. It wasn't finished, but I gave it to my grandson years ago. I smoothed it off and planed it down real smooth. It worked good.
How long were you in port there in Brisbane then?
Well, we were just there, I think, about about a week maybe. And then we stopped back at New Caledonia, and we left all our landing barges there and a third of our crew. Anybody that had been on the captain's mask, in other words, if you was screwed up somehow, or Liberty coming back late from Liberty, or assassinating an officer, or anything like that, you were left. And
In other words, they were put ashore then and they had shore duty.
yeah, in other words, the screw-ups were put ashore there. And there was one officer, he was a 90-day wonder. He was in the company behind me in boot camp. And his girlfriend and my wife, when they were in New York together, they would go together. And he left there, but he had a real exciting adventure in North Africa. He was in charge of a detail that would making sure that the supplies were unloaded and that. And somehow or other, the Vichy French captured them. Then they in turn captured the Vichy French. Then some more French people retook them. Then the Americans finally stepped in and took them all. And I went down to his stateroom to talk to him about it, and he wouldn't even talk to me. He didn't even acknowledge me in the room. And here we were in boot camp together. So when he left our ship there, I was standing alongside the executive officer, and I said to him, "Bye, Harry." I didn't give him a title or nothing. I just to him, "Bye, Harry." He says, "I understood you knew him before. He's changed, has he?" I said, "Yes, sir, he sure has changed 180. He says, "That's what I heard." That's what he was going. Somebody had to go.
Now you had barges that you left at New Caledonia, Ed?
Yeah.
Were those barges that were on board the ship?
They were the ones that you see on History Channel, where the whole ramp drops down, the soldiers run out.
Like landing craft then?
Yeah, landing craft.
Okay, okay.
Now I can get back to when we were in North Africa. Oh, we haven't got there yet. Go ahead.
Okay, Ed, from New Caledonia, where did you go?
Well, we went back to the canal, the Panama Isthmus, and it was so calm, the water was there for a long time, and the helmsmen, they kind of drifted a little bit, so the captain put the ship on the iron, I call it the Iron Mike, that was automatic steering. And we made better time with that than, we didn't get off course so much. But we made Liberty in Balboa, Panama.
On the Pacific side?
Yeah, that was an experience. The little boys wore pants, but the girls wore nothing. That was the funny part. The girls wore nothing, but the boys had little pants on. That was the big my big thing.
How long were you there in Balboa?
I think we only stopped there about 3 days. I think the fuel.
And I assume you had to line up or get in line basically to get through the canal.
Well, they weren't really that busy. There was no waiting.
Okay.
I mean, because they run 24/7 there.
Mm-hmm. And then did you go back to New York after that?
No, we went back to Norfolk then.
Okay.
And we were in for repairs, and I was sent to Brooklyn Navy Yards to go to Sound Motion Picture School. 6 weeks. So I knew I was going there, so my wife was ready, and when I got there to Brooklyn, I had a place to sleep there on base, but all I had to do was make sure I was in school on time and quit on time. And so I found my wife in a little flat, as they called it, right in Brooklyn. And we paid a small amount of money. And one week, my mother-in-law came, and the landlady provided a sleeping room for hers all. She had a spare room. And one day I had taken out the garbage, and the landlady was sitting on the steps looking at the traffic going by, and I sat down and talked to her. And she thought that was so funny and so nice that I would take time to talk with her. But I went to, like I said, it was on motion picture school.
Why were you going to motion picture school?
Well, I was one of the projectionists aboard ship. Because see, we had movies every night.
Sure.
When we first started out, we had the ARC projector on top deck, and then when war was declared, we had to go to below because we couldn't show movies at night on topside.
Blackout conditions,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. And so we had the cameras inside, and we had them in our rec room in the ship, and we had a bed sheet for a curtain. Half the guys would sit on one side, they'd see the picture the right way, and the other guys on the other side would see it in reverse, but they got used to it, and it was all right with them.
So meanwhile, the Dickman was in repairs at Norfolk Navy Base then, was that right?
And we were paid $20 a month for running the projector. But then when war was declared, the captain says everybody has got to do a little extra because there's a war on. He took the $20 away from us. And that kind of teed me off a little bit. But he was still a good skipper, because when he made his 4 stripes, the day it was announced aboard ship, I happened to be on topside, and he was walking, we were facing each other walking, and I saluted him, and I said, "Sir," I said, "may I congratulate you?" He stopped and turned around, and I knew he stopped, and I turned around. He says, "Thank you, sailor." So I thought, well, he's human. But he's still taking $20 away. But anyways, when he left the ship, we got a new skipper, and we got our $20 back.
Do you remember the skipper's name?
No, I can't think what his name is now for nothing. But he was sent back to the States to run the landing craft in off of ships. He was in command of that section of the Navy that were training these people to do it.
I see. Now, once you completed your motion picture school, did you rejoin the Dickman at that point?
Oh yeah. I got to tell you this. This is funny. When I was putting stuff in my locker on the Coast Guard base, on the Navy base there was just another fellow, and he was leaving, and I was coming in. He said, "Hey, fellow," he said, "you're an electrician." I said, "Yeah." He said, "So am I." I says, "Good." He was second class, and I was second class. He says, "Do you want the answers to the questions?" I says, "What?" He says, "Do you want the answers to the questions?" I says, "Sure." So I got A's most of the time because I had all the answers.
This was for the first class exam, is that right?
No, for the motion picture class.
For the actual school, I see.
Yeah, for the actual school. I had the questions. I had the answers. So that time I could remember everything. Most everything.
Well, you still can.
Yeah, not anymore. Anyways, I was asked before I left, "Are you that smart, or did you have the answers?" I said, "No." I says, "You would say I'm that smart." I said, "I've done a lot of studying since I've been in the service," which I did.
And then you went back to the Dickman,
Yeah.
and the Dickman came out of repairs at that point.
Yeah, I had to go to Pier 98 in New York to get my orders were from Navy Yard to Pier 98, then from 98 to Norfolk. I had to take a train, but that's the way my orders read.
Okay.
And I already heard when I was at Pier 98 that the ship was loading for the invasion of North Africa. That's how well of a secret it was. So when I get there, they said, well, we know we're going somewhere, we don't know where. I said, we're going to invasion of North Africa. How do you know that? I said, I heard that in New York. But I didn't say anything to anybody, you know, on the way there.
So is that where you went?
Yeah, that's
where the
we
Dickman went once you
Yeah.
reboarded?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you pick up troops in before you went to
Oh
North
yeah,
Africa?
we picked all of these troops up in Norfolk, and I don't know how, there was a huge convoy. I mean, you could see it for miles.
No, these were Army
Army
troops?
They're all Army people. Patton was somewhere in that line.
And then you headed directly across the Atlantic
Yeah.
into North Africa. What port did you go into there then at?
Well, we went through the straits to get into the Mediterranean Sea, to get into Fidela, North Africa. That's where we invaded. It was just a small town. I remember the night that we invaded when we went in. I was on duty, and over the loudspeaker there was the commander of a destroyer says, I've got a merchant vessel. He doesn't want to heed my command. You know what you got to do. Do it. The 5-inch went boom. He's heading for shore, sir. In the morning, the pilot house was completely gone. The 5-inch took it right out. The ship the rudder was right, it beached itself. Everybody was deserted the ship.
Now, was this where you were in the outer ring of ships initially?
Yeah, initially, yeah, we were on the outside, and the next day at night, we anchored on the outside, and next day the captain asked permission to move into the inside circle so we could unload quicker. In other words, we could maybe make 4 trips instead of 3 by being that much closer. Well, we were told when we were going in we had 3 days to unload and get out. Well, then they extended it to 4. Well, at the end of the 3rd day, 6 o'clock at night, a ship exploded, another ship exploded, another one, the 3 of them exploded. They got a destroyer. They got the destroyer in the engine room, in the fire hall, I should say, probably both together. And there was a sailor. He survived. He got picked up, put on board a transport like ours, went into sick bay, and the next night at the same time, 6 o'clock, that ship was hit.
Were these all torpedoes then from
Yeah, torpedoes.
from German submarines?
German submarines. Probably one. And why they had 6 o'clock, I never heard, never will figure it out, but they did at 6 o'clock. And when the first ship blew up, our captain says, up anchor. And the destroyers were going among us, dropping those ash cans out there, the
Depth charges.
depth charges.
Yeah.
Our ship was rocking and rolling. 525 feet long and 175 feet wide, and it's still. They didn't know where they were coming from, but they don't know whether they got them or not. We never know.
Mm-hmm. So you eventually unloaded there then? In,
Yeah. Well, we
Fidela.
drove out there, and then here's another little incident. I'm on deck and I'm looking at the water. We're in the Mediterranean Sea, and I looked down. I could see a floating mine. So I hollered to the bridge. I said, "There's a mine at 2 o'clock." So they said, number 1, some gun number, shoot it. Number 5 gun will say, shoot it. Number 5 gun, I said, shoot it. Sir, how do you fire this? There was a guy on gun watch didn't know how to load it. It was already loaded. He didn't know enough to pull the receiver back and load one.
So
So the destroyer says, we'll take care of it over the PA system. We'll take care of it. One shot out of a 20 millimeter. The mine exploded. It was behind us by then.
harmlessly then.
Yeah,
Good you didn't brush up alongside of it.
yeah.
Where did you go then from port there at Fidela?
We eventually pulled into Casablanca where we finished unloading. And this was on a Sunday when we got, the Sunday morning, Sunday dinner time was when I looked over the side of the ship, and here were some guys from our ship, the soldiers, were manning this anti-aircraft gun. And one guy was shaving out of his helmet, another guy was eating out of his, he warmed up something out of his helmet to eat. And here I just had a nice chicken dinner. So I went down and I got them each an ice cream bar. I think I paid 5 cents a piece for them then. And they gave me in French money the value in our money of $2.50. They didn't have any American money left, they had French money. Nice. I still got some of it.
And again, in Casablanca, were you unloading troops or cargo?
Well,
or?
cargo.
Cargo.
Cargo. Yeah, one of the winchmen, they had a floodlight on, so they could see better.
This was at night then?
Nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
The winch operator got hit in the shoulder by a sniper. So they shut the light off and still unloaded. Just had to do it a little slower. That way you couldn't see the winchman, because everybody else was down in the hole. And then when they put it on top side, you know, on the dock, pardon me, there was no lights there either.
Okay, and after Casablanca, where did you go with the ship?
I'm thinking we went to Mirs El Kabir for more training exercises. And then we came back home for more repairs, more ship fitting.
This was back in Norfolk?
Well, I think it was Newport News, I think this time.
Newport News?
Yeah, because you have to go in every year and get your bottom scraped so you can get the barnacles off so you can have more speed and more efficiency fuel. And speed we needed. So they say when we got into Norfolk, it was in the winter and it was cold. It was a Newport News rides across the bay from Norfolk. And every person except chiefs had to go over the side. And so I said to my chief, I said, everybody goes over, who's going to make sure the lights follow them down? Oh, you can have that job you want, Ed. So I didn't have to go over the side. All the rest of the electricians did, but I didn't.
Going over the side, you meant going down the landing nets?
No, you're swinging on a bosun chair, tied in with a rope to hold you close to the ship, so you run a chipping hammer.
Oh, I see.
Chipping hammer, you know.
You're chipping paint then?
Yeah, barnacles.
Barnacles.
Yeah, scraping barnacles off.
Were you in
Hammer.
dry dock at this point?
Yeah, you're in.
Okay.
As the water goes down, you follow the water line down. And you chip the barnacles off. Then they paint it. Then after the paint dries, they flood the ship back in.
Okay, I didn't realize that the ship's crew actually had to do the chipping and
we
repainting.
did then. I said this was procedure then.
Okay. Where did you go after that?
Well, we went back. Then we went. No, let's see. No, I think we made a trip to Bermuda for supplies. And while Bermuda was almost in sight, the island was, when one of the lookouts spotted 2 torpedoes coming at us. And the captain made a hard turn to port. And I was up in the forward section of the ship at the time, and I could see those 2 fishes going through the water about 40, 50 feet away from us, went right by us. I said, they had hit up there, that's where we had aerial bombs and depth charges in, in the hole. That would have made a grand explosion.
Was your ship ever hit with a torpedo or?
Nope, we never were hit. We had in, let's see, Italy, we had 23 near misses. I mean,
of torpedoes?
no, depth bombs, aerial bombs.
Aerial bombs.
I mean, we had 23 holes in our ship, just small holes, but you could well close from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing major.
After Bermuda, did you sail from there then?
No, we went back to stateside to pick up more supplies. We were there just one day and we were given short liberty to say we'd been on the island. You could go anywhere you wanted to, but there were no stores open. The buildings were open, the merchants were there, but we don't sell on Sundays. That was it, we don't sell on Sundays. Okay.
So then after Bermuda, did you sail elsewhere then other
Well,
than...
we went back to pick up more supplies and I think we went to Sicily then. And we had Darby's Rangers aboard ship. And I found out that they were having, not drills, but where the officers advised the crew how, all soldiers how to handle certain situations. Some kind of a conference, you might say, or anyways, talks. The lieutenant would talk to them. And they were talking this one day about taking prisoners. That's in Sicily. Taking prisoners. And one guy says, well, what happened? He says, if you get one prisoner, what do we do with him? Shoot him. Oh? Shoot him. You can't afford to take one guy back. And this one young ranger says, sir, he says, what happens if a whole squad surrenders to you? You can't shoot them all. Well, the officer thought a minute, he says, disarm them and send them back and hope they get there. But what was really fun, when the major city of Sicily, can't think of the name of the capital now.
Palermo?
Yeah, I think that was it. They were being bombed, and they had, well, I'd say 15 or 20 prisoners in the compound they had there, and the bombs were falling close, so they says, well, let's turn them loose and tell them to come back. Well, when they come back, they had about 40 or 50 prisoners, instead of the 20 or 30 they had to start with. In other words, they took more prisoners back with them, because the food was good, safe.
Let me just ask you about the Derby Rangers. Were they, was that U.S. Army or?
Yeah, they were part of the U.S. Army.
I see.
They didn't run, they didn't walk anywhere, they run. And they were allowed to carry their own sidearms, anything they preferred. And one lanky guy, he was probably 6'2" or 6'3", he walked through the passageway where I was in our compartment there, and the door was open. I says, are you a ranger? He says, yep, that's sure I am. He had a 6-shooter tied on low on his leg, just like you see in the Old West. But they were a ruthless bunch of boys.
Was that when you participated in the landing at
Yeah.
Sicily?
Mm-hmm. Getting back, let's go back a little bit now. On the way over, the gunnery officer approached me and he says, Ed, he says, I got a little job I want you to do for me. I said, oh. He takes me to a landing barge that had converted into a rocket, a 12 rocket pad. He says, as it is now, he says, I have to shoot all 12 or nothing. He says, can you convert it to shoot 2? I said, looked at it and I said, yeah. I said, which 2 do you want? Well, he says, the first 2, the second 2, you know. I said, yeah, I can, if I got the equipment, I can do it. So I went and found the 6 switches and some wire. I got it all wired up. And at the time, I didn't know, but his job was to take out that lighthouse that was a landmark. That was his job as a gunnery officer to take that out. Well, he took it out in one salvo of 2 rockets. His trajectory was right on and he did his job. Then on the way back, he cornered me and he says, Ed, can you give me a drawing of what you did on that rockets? I said, sure, I never thought about it, you know. So I made him a drawing. Now when we get back, I'm first ashore to get some supplies, electric supplies we desperately needed. And while I'm there at the counter, I hear some electricians talking about a wiring diagram. And I'm listening, and I walked over to them. I says, "May I ask what you guys are talking about?" Oh, they said, "This is a military secret." I says, "Okay." So I went back to the counter and listened again and got my stuff, and I walked over to them and I says, "Fellas," I says, "that's my wire diagram you're discussing." No. Maybe it's because the tape's out.
Now it's showing recording.
It's on.
This is tape number 2, and we're interview with Ed Jamros on March 21, 2009. Ed is a World War II veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard. Now, Ed, we were about ready to make the landing into Sicily. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, we landed at Sicily. We always do this at night. It takes quite a while to unload the troops. We had Darby's Rangers aboard. They were part of the Army, but they were highly trained, very motivated, very skilled, and we put them ashore along with their supplies and our, did I get into that about the landing? The rockets.
Yes, we talked about the rocket launcher and you modifying the wiring diagram and all.
Now, anyways, on the third day we were there, the seas picked up, and I happened to be doing something up in the bow of the ship, and I was watching them load a Patton tank into the tank lighters, and landing barges, I should say, and they couldn't get the rope loose off the barge. And so the wind was picking up then, and the barge was going further out and tipping, almost on its side. And somebody from the bridge hollered, "Cut that line up front." So I was there, and I had my trusty knife with me. And it was a 2-inch line. It had such a strain on it, it was just like sticking your knife in the butter to cut the line, and everything was good.
What happened to the Patton tank?
It was saved, you know, I mean, everything was saved. Just soon you cut the line, it went right down to the water. It was riding with the waves, and now they have this 100 feet of line hanging off the bow that, so it doesn't get into the prop of the ship,
Sure.
the lighter.
And when you debarked the troops, and did they have to go over the side on the nets? Or?
Oh yeah, I had to go over the side on the net. They had to climb down about 30, 25 feet or so, get into a boat that's running up and down with the waves.
Into the landing craft.
The landing craft. We never went into anything smooth. It's always rough.
And did you have an opposed landing at all? Did the USS Dickman take any shell fire or any aerial bombing?
Well, we were bombed there at night, and we had, I think they said it was 23 holes in the ship, but they were small holes, you know, shrapnel holes from the bombs. But we never had, it was at Sicily, we had a German Fokker come in, we had our barrage balloons up, and he shot our barrage balloon down, the Fokker did, and then I thought he was going to strafe us. Instead of that, he went to the stern, and he went sideways like this, and he waved to us when he was directly behind us. He waved, and some of us waved back, and when he got by, I says, "Well, I'm safe." I stood up, and I was laying behind the 20-millimeter gun shield, and just as I stood up, that 20-millimeter started barking, and my head was hitting the barrel extension. So my ears rang for quite a few days. I think he must have got off 15, 20 shots before I had to think, move!
Did they get that Fokker?
Yeah, they got the Fokker. We got half credit for it. Yeah, you can see his tracers going right into it.
Well, why would he just shoot the barrage balloons down and then just wave off if he's going to go home?
Like I say, he didn't tell us. But he was smoking when he leveled off, so we got him, you know.
Where did you go after Sicily?
Well, we came back stateside again and got ready for Italy. Another vacation. I always got 10 days when we came in, so I was blessed real good. I was home.
So you took the
Twice
train
a-
back to Detroit?
Yeah, I was able to get back to Detroit twice a year. I remember this was when I came home in '44. I came home at night, and I knew I had a daughter, and I walked into my mother-in-law's place, and I see a little girl walking along the couch. My mouth opened up, and I looked, and my mother-in-law said, "Shh," pointed to the kitchen. This was my daughter's cousin, first cousin. She was 9 months older. You know, I mean, here it is January. The girl was born in September. She's walking.
This was the first time you'd seen your
Yeah, the
your
first
daughter.
time I'd seen my daughter.
What was her name?
Susan May,
Susan. And where does she live now?
Battle Creek.
I see. Okay.
She was the first.
Now Susan was the one that played with the
Elephants.
elephants.
Yep.
That,
So-
that you had purchased in Bombay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, she still got them. No tusk though. That was my big surprise. And
So then you, again, you're back at Norfolk and you embarked more troops
yeah, we embarked more troops, and
and went back to Italy. Where did,
we pulled into North Africa and let them off there. They trained some there. Then we took them into Italy, and we made, I think, 3 runs into Naples after it fell with supplies. We'd pick up in North Africa and take them into Naples. And then we got word we were going to make another invasion, and that's when we went into Salerno. Now, the going into Salerno was funny. The Italians had surrendered. We were about a day or 2 out of the invasion point, and there was a bunch of us sitting on the fantail of the ship. We were eating army rations, and what we didn't like we just throw overboard. And all of a sudden, our 40 millimeter on top side there, they fired. And here's 2 rounds going straight at a ship behind us. And fortunately, we were on the course of swinging, and they probably missed the ship maybe by 100 yards, but you could see 2 rounds going straight. All I could think of for a second, they're going to hit that ship. But they didn't. Well, we'll come to find out when they went from automatic, from remote control to local control, they were supposed to close the firing mechanism, and they didn't. They just got off the,
so this was an accidental discharge then?
yeah, it was actually, yeah.
It didn't hit anybody?
No.
Fortunately.
Yeah, well, it was the same way when we were on one trip in the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to either Puerto Rico or somewhere, and we had a 5-inch gun on the stern at the time, and we had a submarine alert. Right away, the order was out: 5-inch gun. You don't shoot at anybody unless they shoot in at us. Pretty soon, the 5-inch sounded. 5-inch, where's your target? Silence. 5-inch, where's your target? Silence. 5-inch, where in the hell is your target? Sorry, sir. No, another fuddle up. Somebody pulled the lanyard.
Took them a while to come up with a sorry, sir. Huh?
Yeah, it did. What else do you say? I want to say something first. Go ahead. Yes. I'm going to go back a little ways. When we were in port side in the States, we had to check the running lights every night. I think at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, we had the apprentice. He would turn the lights on. Yep, they burn. We never used them out to sea. We only used them when we were in port to check. And this one apprentice, he said to me one day, he says, "Ed, every time there's a certain officer on, he asks me an electrical question, and I said, I have to explain to him I'm an apprentice. I do not know nothing. I'm an apprentice. I'm learning." And he said, "It embarrasses me." I says, "Okay, next time let me know." So he told me, and he says, "Going to be on tonight." I says, "Okay." So I put on clean work clothes, nice clean white hat. My shoes were shined, going on the bridge. And I saluted and I told him, running lights have been checked and all in order, sir. Then he asked me a question. Now, I'm a second-class electrician at that time. And I said to him, sir, I said, I don't know. You're a second-class electrician? Yes, sir. And you don't know? Yes, sir. So finally he said, well, what do you know? Well, sir, I said, I have 2 books. And I told him how many. One was Odell's handyman, Odell's book for electricians, another one, engineering handbook for engineers. And I told him how many pages were in there, total of the 2 books, how many pages, and then I started into the theory of electricity. Then I got up to a point where I was going to, now this is maybe 10 minutes. There's 5 people on the bridge at all times. The helmsman, the radio operator, the navigator, you know, the yeoman and so forth. Whether the ship's underway or not, they're there, at least then. And they were all listening, kind of smirking a little bit. They could see something coming. Finally, the officer says, dismiss. I said, yes, sir. Then I pulled the old Columbo act. Took a couple steps backwards, you know, I turned around, about face. Then I stopped, turned around. Sir, I said, I saluted again. He didn't return my salute, so I'm standing there. Then he finally returns my salute. I said, the answer to your question is, then I started elaborating on it. He says, dismissed. Yes, sir. Then I salute him again. Now he has to salute me. He never asked another question. I thought it was humorous. Now, where were we?
Well, then I understand you went to Glasgow, Scotland.
Yeah, we left the Mediterranean Sea. I know it, we must have taken troops up to Scotland in order to go there. I think they were bringing them into North Africa. Then they're shuttling back and getting more. But they were preparing then for the invasion of the mainland, Europe.
For D-Day.
Yeah. That's when we came back, and on our way back, we was off of Iceland. The winds peaked at 100 miles an hour. Our bow of our ship was, when we were loaded, was 25 feet out of the water, and they said we had 25 feet of green water coming over our bow. It moved our anchor engines back. It just stretched the steel. It didn't tear it loose. It just stretched it. And there was an electrical motor on fire on the stern somewhere, and I was seasick, but I got up and I could open up the door to where our compartment was. And I could see that motor, and I says, it's out. Turn around, back, lay down.
You couldn't fix it.
No way I wouldn't. Nobody was allowed out on deck. It was just too
rough.
Yeah, too rough.
And I understand that was the last voyage that you participated in with the Dickman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, like I say, I saw a destroyer go right through a wave. He was gone. The whole ship was gone. You couldn't see nothing. Then the wave went through it, and there was a destroyer blowing smoke out the stack, and took the next one up.
So you were in a large convoy coming back then?
Oh yeah, always convoy, big convoys. But you see, we didn't know it at the time, but the intelligence knew where all the German submarines were, so we just detoured around them. We were so big that we could detour around them. And because every morning or at nighttime, the Germans would report in on station where they're at, and we had their code.
We had broken the German code by that point.
Oh yeah, they knew it, but they didn't tell anybody. Yeah, I like to watch History Channel. It's, just relive some of that.
Did you come back to Norfolk then, and is that when you left the ship?
I came back to Norfolk, yeah.
What was your next duty station then with the Coast Guard?
Well, I came back after I left the ship in '44. I was transferred to the Coast Guard base at Detroit. That was at the foot of Woodward Avenue. I had 30 days R&R, and then I was there 30 days, and they transferred me to the Tamarack, which was a submarine rescue vessel at Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
That was its home base then, Manitowoc?
Yeah. Yeah, we'd just go out 200 feet of Lake Michigan, 200 feet deep, I should say. And while the submarines were test diving down there and doing their routine, we'd be on top of them, right over the top with a diving bell in case they run into trouble. We had one diver on board ship to operate it. And one time he said to me, Ed, he says, you want to go down with me in the bell? I says, we're going to put it over the side of the ship? No. He says, we'll just go down in the bell. I said, what do you mean? He said, we just pressurize ourselves. And we used helium, a mixture of helium and something else. And when you got over 100 feet, you start talking like a frog. You had a real deep, deep voice. But we went down 180, and he says, if you can't pop your ears, let me know, because he says, I don't want to damage your eardrums. Well, I could keep swallowing and popping, and no problems. So I can say I've been down 180 feet.
How long did you stay on the Tamarack?
I think 5 months, because it was rough out there every time, and every time it got rough, I got seasick. I mean sick.
Again, you were on the Great Lakes
Yeah.
entirely then with the
Oh
Tamarack?
yeah, I mean, well, the Great Lakes they're choppier than the ocean is. They're shorter wave. And when I'm saying shorter, the shorter distance between them.
Right.
And so we was in, I think, February, something like that, and the steering engine broke down up in the bridge, and the orderly came and got me, and I went up with my bucket, and I said, oh, this is the time to put my act down. I heaved when I didn't have to heave, and I heaved when I did. It took me 15 to 20 minutes to do 5 minutes worth of work, and the next morning I was transferred to the Milwaukee base. So I was there for, I think, 5 months.
So shore duty?
Huh?
Shore duty then at that
Yeah.
point?
I was shore-based, and I took some leave and come home and got my wife and daughter, and we had in a flat there. We were paying $80 a month for the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom down the hall, and a bath further down the hall.
Let me just back up briefly to where you left the USS Dickman. Did the entire crew, were they split up at that point?
No, nobody split those days.
Okay.
Not like they do now.
Well, why did you leave the Dickman then?
Well, chronic seasickness.
Ah,
Oh, I didn't tell you. When we was at Mirs Al Kabir, we had electric compasses to put in the landing barges. And of course I got picked for the job. And I got one in, and I was sick, and I come up about 11 o'clock, and I reported to the doctor. I said, Doc, I'm sick. He could look at me, and he could see that I was seasick. You know what I mean? Once a person's seasick, you can see it. You're green, and you might say you're green in the eyes. And he says, we just got some brand new pills in today, seasick pills. He says, take one. And so I had a glass of water and took it. He said, oh, open your mouth up. I said, huh? He said, open your mouth, I want to see if you swallowed it. I said, okay, move your tongue. He took it to the presser and went on both cheeks and upper and lower jaw. No, yeah, I guess you swallowed it. He said, come back at 1 o'clock and I'll give you another one. So 1 o'clock, I come back, same procedure. At 1:30, I'm back up. I already threw up my dinner. He says, you're all done. When you get back to port, you are going ashore. Oh, I says, thank you. That was probably 2 or 3 months later. But I could eat laying down and hold. If I was laying down, I could eat.
And when you got up, it wouldn't stay on.
No, it wouldn't stay there.
Okay. Okay, now we're back at Coast Guard Station, Milwaukee. You're ashore.
Yeah.
Your wife and daughter are there with you.
Mm-hmm.
What were your duties at Milwaukee then?
Well, I just had to keep the base going, keep the electrical equipment going, and I had to charge the buoy batteries, get them ready to put out to sea and put out to the lake in the spring. In those days, that battery was about 18 inches high and about a foot in circumference. They were just a single cell, and you had to charge them up and make sure the posts weren't broke or anything like that. one time I came in and my charge was off, and I said, what in the world happened? Why did it go off? You know, I'm looking. And I find the battery, one battery blew its case, and it put a dent in the roof 20 feet up in the air. That much explosion in that.
How much force?
The force of that explosion in the battery of that acid
Mm.
for the arc.
And then where were you transferred from Milwaukee?
Well, when I was in Milwaukee, my back was killing me because I went into service with a bad back because when we were farming, my dad and I, when I was in high school, we had to haul the manure out with a wheelbarrow. And if he'd do it in 6, I would do it in 4. And he says to me, you're going to hurt your back. And I said to myself, what does he know? He's just an 8-year-old boy. Then, you know, teenage kid. Sure enough, he was right. I hurt my back. I went into service with a hurt back. I hurt a little bit more in the service. Came out with a hurt back and seasickness. And I still got a bad back. 2 operations, I still got a bad back. All my life I've had a bad back. All because I wouldn't listen to my dear old dad.
You wouldn't listen to your dad.
Yep, that's right. Anyways, when they were having a bond drive at the base there. See, I'd been to the Veterans Hospital in Chicago. They checked me out there for my back, and they gave me a battery to test what they did those days. And one of them, they took a stomach sample, and then they gave me a shot. See, they put a tube down through my nose, took the sample. Then they gave me a shot, and I had to sit there for an hour. I'm just in their bathrobe, not the bathrobe, but the nightgown they give you. And I'm sitting on this chair in the office, hard chair, tile floor, and I'm unhappy, and I'm almost in shock over it. Because I'm sweating, I've got a pool of water on the floor. The nurse comes in, oh my, puts her hand on my head was numb. She gets a doctor, he comes in and does the same thing. How much longer you got? She says 10 minutes. You'll go. All right, don't worry. It was like when we were there, they wanted blood volunteers. You knew. I was one of the U's. Well, I was the last one. No place to sit. This was before breakfast. Couldn't eat or drink. And by 10:30, I was kind of in a stew. When they got to me, I almost went out on them. I almost fainted. When they put the needle in, oops! Oh, you can't use you. They took me back in a wheelchair. But then I got transferred because then we had this bond drive, and I says, I'm getting out. I knew I was going to get a discharge. So I says, why should I pay for a bond now? Won't complete. So I told the yeoman. So he takes it to the commander of the base, and he calls me in. He says, I want to be 100%. I said, sir, I said, I'm going to be out in 6 weeks. Yeah, but you're still here. I said, but I'm going to be discharged in 6 weeks. I'll only have a third of the bond paid for. I'm doing the mathematics on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he says, I still want to be 100%. Well, I said, you put it that way, okay. So now the yeoman has to take all the stuff down, and I make him look up my social security number and my number. I forgot it. Next day I'm transferred. Now I got 10 days en route to get rid of my family, take my family back to Detroit, and get to Fort William McHenry in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm doing guard duty there. They're turning ships from the merchant ships that were going, carrying ammunition over and bringing it back, turn around halfway across and bring it back. And that's where my discharge caught up to me. Then I spent 6 days in Cleveland waiting for the paperwork to come. Those days, we always carried our records with us. You can't when you're discharged.
So you were in Fort McHenry then about a month, was that right?
Yeah, about a month, yeah.
Okay. And you were actually discharged then in Cleveland?
Yeah, yeah, they sent me to Cleveland because that's the closest to my home station.
And do you remember the day that you were discharged? What date that was?
22nd day of May, and I wanted to get home, and I got home for 23rd. That was my wedding anniversary.
That was 1945 then.
Yep. I was married 4 years then, and I remembered riding on the train going from Cleveland to Detroit, and the MPs and the SPs came through, and they says, "Where's your travel papers?" And I says, "I don't have any." "Well, what do you mean you don't have any?" I said, "I don't have any." "Well, what are we going to do with you?" I says, "I don't know." I says, "I know where I'm going." "Where's that?" "Detroit." Then I showed them my discharge button. "Oh, okay." That's it. Yeah, there it goes.
Well, Ed, let me ask you about life in the military service. How did you keep in touch with your family as far as mail and that sort of thing?
Well, before the war started, we had the regular mail, and we'd call occasionally, but then they developed this V-mail, where you would write on one side the letter, one sheet, and we used to write letters back and forth, and they were free. I thought that's great, because they were only 3 cents a piece, or 2 cents those days. And it took a little longer, but then when you was overseas, time was, you know.
What was the process for V-mail? What was that actually like?
Well, you would, first of all, you wrote your letter, then you had to have it censored by your command, the certain officer board in your division. And they knew me that I would never do nothing, but I had the code with my wife where I would say, is your mother feeling better after her illness? That and it told us I was in Africa. I had something else for if it was going to England, something else if we were going to somewhere else, you know. I could think of Pacific. So she knew about where we were. But I would write letters most every day and then number them, turn them and get them censored and turn them in. I never had no time did they ever have to black anything out on me. And
Why would you number the letters?
well, that's why when my wife would get them, because they didn't go out every day. So you could be 2 weeks crossing. Well, there's no mail delivery in 2 weeks. So you had all these letters numbered, so she knew which one to read first when they came.
You were still writing at least a letter a day then, is that
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I'd tell her about what I was doing and so forth.
sure.
Of course, you only could use one side of the sheet.
It was a limited amount of space you had.
Yeah, well, I think they were smaller than our standard 8x11 piece of paper.
Now, your incoming letters from your wife, were they also in V-mail?
Yeah, oh yeah. She'd send them to Port of New York. In my case, it was all went to New York. They would they'd V-mail them.
Photograph them there in the
microfilm.
V-mail. Microfilm.
Yeah.
Was the microfilm actually printed and developed on board ship then, once you got it?
No, it was wherever the film went to. It was over, let's say it would go to North Africa. Whatever was printed there, then we'd get our mail.
I see.
Wherever I could, so maybe it was in England, then they'd fly the mail to wherever we were. Most of the time we were at Mirs El Kabir when we were over in the Mediterranean theater.
What was the food like on board ship?
Well, the food was, most of the time was real good. I mean, of course, I came from a poor family. I was the cook most of the time. So anything that was cooked was always better than mine. So I thought we ate high off the hog. We had chicken every Sunday. Every Sunday, every day of the week was the same meal. Thursday noon was steak. And we used to keep the butcher real happy. And he would cut us 8 to 10 steaks. How many were in our gang? You'd save them for us, and we'd have steak fry in the electric shop at night, along with a couple loaves of bread. The food was good.
So no complaints there.
No.
Okay. And as far as supplies, bedding supplies, clothing, and that sort of thing,
Well,
was that handled well?
we ran out of razor blades one time, and when I was in India, I bought a straight razor. I think I got it for 50 cents or something like that. And I was down to that one time, but I always used a safety razor, but I learned how to shave with a straight razor. And when we first started going into combat, the orders were no beards. And
You didn't want any reflections coming ashore or anything, right?
well, facial hair, if you get hit, you got more chance of infection. That was the story anyways. So I had sideburns down to here, and my chief says, Ed, no beard. I says, Chief, this aren't beard. Well, what is that then? These are sideburns. I always tried to bend the rule just a little bit.
How would you handle stress and pressure of the job, and particularly when you were under fire or anything?
Well, I just rolled with it. I mean, I didn't think, of course, like I say, never being actually in combat, where somebody's shooting at you unless you're hiding. I never was in that situation.
I mean, you'd have aircraft dropping bombs on you or striking you occasionally, but...
Well, hey, I was on damage control in Sicily. When the airplanes were coming, we were on top side the ship. I laid alongside the emergency generator and went to sleep. Everybody else was up and waiting. They said, you were even snoring. So I was sleeping.
You handled stress by sleeping through it then, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was like one time we were in the Atlantic somewhere, and the submarines were there, they said. We had to shut everything down. And I was assigned to the generator flat to start everything back up again. Once the engineer started the generator up, I had to push all the switches to close it. I have a battle lantern with me. It's pitch black. You can't talk, you can't walk. And here I am in the center of the ship, 4 flights down. You can hear the waves at the side of the ship. I mean, I just said, well, we're not going to get hit. I always said I have God on my side.
You did what you needed to do to get the generator started again.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, I was a firm believer of the Bible. I think that a lot helped me.
So your faith...
My faith.
Stayed with you, and you stayed with your faith, and that carried you through
yes,
then.
My faith was well-founded. At least that's what I think it was.
Let me back up a little bit, and I'm going to ask you about entertainment. And you did go to motion picture projection school.
Yeah.
And why did you go to that school then?
They sent me. I knew how to operate. I was operating it before. They said, we want you to go to motion picture school. I says, fine. You do what you're told to do. It's like if somebody said, you go there and do that, I was always taught you go there and do that. You don't question it.
Well, did you show pictures topside, or was it?
Oh, when we first started out, before the war started, we were topside. But then we went down into our rec room, and that was part of our recreational was movies every night. And one night, the captain never come down, very seldom. One night he came down 7 minutes to 8. Well, the recreational officer came in at 5 minutes to 8. He said, start the movie. I said, what for? It's not 8 o'clock. The captain's here. I said, we had a sheet on the wall with under his signature. The movie shall start at 8 o'clock. I pointed to that. I said, that's his signature. It's not 8 o'clock yet, sir. but he's here. I says, it says 8 o'clock there, sir. I don't know whether he heard me or not, but I started it at 8 and they were still coming down, you know, but it was right at 8 o'clock on my watch, and I said, okay, I'll start the movie.
So you started the movie at 8.
Yeah. Usually if they're still coming down, I might wait a couple of minutes. But then we had a minstrel show one time where the white people were black and the black people were white, you know, colored.
Mm-hmm.
And see, we had, at that time, the black people were only good for stevedore work, mess work, or officers, people, waiters. They were never given deckhands. They never had a deckhand.
So you did have black enlisted then in the Coast Guard on board the ship.
Yeah, we had a few black people in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered one time, sometime along the line here is a young, good-looking black person. He was just on board ship and he was looking out over the rail, and I stopped and talked to him. He had fireman stripes on. Now our fire hall was all Southerners from Alabama, Louisiana. They were firemen, and I thought, oh boy, they were all rednecks, every one of them. If I can use that term, you know,
Sure.
describing them. He didn't even last an hour in the fire hall before he went up the ladder. He had to climb down 3 decks, down a small enclosed tube to get down into the fire hall. You had an airlock on top. You had to, when you got in, you close it because the fire room was pressurized. It was like when we would maneuver, getting out into the bay, your forwards, one engine might be going full steam ahead and the other one might be full steam astern. And sometime in that point, you'd lose air pressure in there, and those fires would come right out and they'd cross each other. They'd still go back into the boiler, but due to the lack of air pressure in it, they would go back. And there's one engineering officer, he was just on board the ship, a new officer out of the academy. He got his hair singed on his legs and 2nd-degree burns.
Ooh, he was standing between the 2 boilers.
Yeah. So we had 4 boilers.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, again, you did have movies then.
Yeah, we had
Was it
movies
every
every night.
Did you have movies?
But sometimes you had to rerun them because you couldn't get any new ones.
Sure.
One time we exchanged with some ship, and we did it with a beacher's buoy where you shoot a line over and then you get a guy line and you pull one case back and you send it back with another one. But we had movies.
What other things did you do for entertainment then aboard, even among the
Well,
sailors?
when we had troops aboard, there was a lot of poker games going on topside. One time I saw $1,000 on the table in one row. And at night times, the guys would get together and play poker, or they'd play blackjack, or, you know, card game. And my chief electrician, the first one I had, he said to me, Ed, he says, you roll the dice? I says, nope. He says, I'm going to show you. He said, you want to come down tonight to our room? I says, sure, what about? He says, I'll show you. He says, you never bet on the dice winning. You always bet with the dice. The dice winning, they'll never lose. I mean, you'll lose money if you bet against the dice. You bet on the dice. So I think I must have rolled them about 300 times, and about 67, 60% of the time, the dice would win. The guy would lose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was real interesting that night. I said, well, I know I'm not going to become a crap guy.
What did you think of your officers and fellow enlisted men then?
Well, they were all nice. Some of them were, no, I'm not going to say, they were drunk. Some of them were drunks. It was like when I was a captain in a port's office. The fellow that relieved me, his name was Nickerman, Don Nickerman. He was always go out and get drunk. And I'd have to wake him up he wouldn't get up to relieve me at 8 o'clock. So one day I says, the heck with this. So at 7:45 I went up and said, hey, Nickerman, get up. And he never stirred, and I threw a bucket of cold water on him. After that, Nickerman, get up. Get right up.
He was there.
Yep, he learned. He had to dry his mattress out and everything.
Let me stop. Ed, after being discharged from the Coast Guard, do you want to tell us about your family and your wife and your children?
Well, my older daughter Susan was born in September of '43, and we didn't have any, we couldn't make any more kids until we adopted one in December of '49, because our doctor we had, he says, there's nothing wrong with you. You made one, you can make more. And he said, just think of all the fun you're having. So anyways, my wife said, some of adoption takes so long. Oh no, he says, we can have, I have 3 or 4 a year come in here. He's running a small hospital in Brighton. So one day we said, well, we'll think about it. We said, a couple of weeks later, we said, yeah, we'll entertain the idea good. And he calls my wife and says, your package is here. We knew what it was. He said, you want to come in and look at it? Sure, before we accepted her. So we went in, and well, we was in there, before the baby was born, we were there to see the doctor, because the girl had already been admitted, but hadn't quite delivered. And he said, when you go home, you don't tell nobody. You don't tell your parents, you don't tell your in-laws, you tell nobody. You understand that? Nobody. No, okay, why? We didn't ask why. So when we go to pick her up, he says, who did you tell? I says, Doc, we didn't tell nobody. I says, no, what's this all about? He says, I was offered $2,500 for that girl today. Now this is in 1949. Ooh,
What did you name your second daughter?
Judith Ann.
And then you had 2 boys beyond that, is that right?
Say, her mother was 16 years old and her dad was 43. I had to get that in.
Okay.
Well, you're wondering where the parents were.
And
Something like that.
Your third child then?
Yeah, John was born in Highland Park, Detroit, because when my wife was carrying him, our local doctor decided to go to Europe for 2 months. And my wife started to spot, so we had to go to another doctor. He was a DO, and in those days, the DOs could not operate in an MD hospital. So we had to go to Highland Park for her delivery. I took her in there. She was admitted at 2 o'clock, and it wasn't until about 4 o'clock before the child was born. And at 8 o'clock in the evening, we were on the floor where the birthing department was, and we could see her 10 minutes every half hour. And at 8 o'clock that evening, she said, they can even give me a shot to get me to relax. So I go to the nurse, I says, my wife needs a shot to relax. She's had one. I says, no, she hasn't. She's had one. I says, no, she hasn't. She's had one. I'll show you. She picks up the chart. Oh, she went and got her shot. So then at 10 o'clock, we were all pushed down into the lobby of the hospital. Now, in order to find out, we had to ask the operator. We could only do it once an hour to find out what was going on. Meanwhile, I had made 2 calls to Brighton to find out where the doctor is. After his evening hours, I thought he should be there. 11 o'clock, no doctor. Called his wife again. He's in Detroit. I says, no, he's not. So he come in at 2 o'clock. We had a little discussion. He said, you can take her out of here. I said, Doc, all I want from you is a healthy baby and a healthy wife. Well, I got both. good healthy baby and a good healthy wife.
And that was John.
That was John. And when we'd go back to see that doctor for the boy's checkup, I wasn't even in the office as far as he was concerned. He would not even recognize me, look right through me.
And then your fourth child.
Yeah, he was born, Bill was born 2 years later in November, and he was born in the hospital in Brighton there, and I took her in about 8 o'clock, and he was born at 9:30. Boom, boom.
Susan is currently living in Battle Creek.
Yeah.
And where does Judy live?
Judy lives in Mason. Her husband runs an air conditioning system. He sells these units that are in motels and hotel rooms. And then he has the bigger commercial ones where you can heat a good size room or a couple of rooms. And they're so sophisticated that if somebody moves in the room, they'll start up as the temperature's down. They'll shut off. When, let's say the classroom is over, they shut off. Somebody moves in, they start up, but they're still down.
And then John lives closest to you, is that
Yeah,
right?
John lives just a mile away, quarter mile, about 3/8 of a mile as the bird flies.
In Potterville.
Mhm.
Okay. And where does William live?
He lives in west of Charlotte on Stein Road.
I see.
He's unemployed right at the moment, but he's hoping to get into the casino at Battle Creek,
Battle Creek.
As maintenance there.
Right.
He spent 21 years in the Army almost.
He had a career then in the
Yeah,
Army.
he was a career Army man.
Okay. Where did you live then after coming out of the Coast Guard? Where did you and Virginia live?
Well, we settled in Brighton. We bought 40 acres. That was across the road from my father-in-law's place and adjacent to my dad's property. And then after my dad died, I inherited the farm. Then we got bigger. We moved up Fowlerville. I got a 233 acre farm there. And then I found out that if I missed a couple of cow milkings, my cows dropped off of milking, so I missed 2 due to an operation, and I says, well, we can't farm because if I have a vacation, I'll be thinking how much money we're losing. Besides us having a little problem with migraines. And so then I went into industry.
You sold the farm and moved
Oh,
at
yeah.
that point?
We moved into Fowlerville because I was working for Utilex there in Fowlerville. They were a die-cast shop. They made all the Sears' bathroom accessories and door handles for Ford and the door locks for Ford and Lincoln and other stuff like that. And but that wasn't real steady. So meanwhile, I had taken the exam to become an electrician for the state, and I got called to Ionia. I went up there and got a job and was up there 3 years. And I transferred to Lansing to be an electrician there, and then I became an inspector. And that's how in February 15th, 1980, my wife and I both retired from the state. We moved to Chippewa Lake, and I wasn't satisfied just being retired. Meanwhile, we had started up a little corporation of our own, and I was the president and treasurer, and my wife was secretary and vice president. And then we found out that going to Texas in the winter was better than Michigan in the winter, so I was almost 4 years inspecting up there. Then I quit. No, I quit. We had been down into Arkansas for the creator of the mine diamond field there. They got a diamond mine down there.
Right.
They used to have. And I said to my wife, look at all these motor homes and trailers going south and we're going north. She said, it's because you're working yet. I says, take care of that Monday morning. That was in October, and I gave my boss Monday morning a real short notice. I quit December 23rd, 1984.
Were you working for Mecosta County?
Yeah,
as
I was working
electrical
part-time,
inspector?
4 days a week.
Okay.
So that was the end of my career there, and I piddled around on jobs and it's like now I still work. I pick up junk for the masons and scrap it out.
When did you move here to Fowlerville?
We moved here in 1993,
Potterville, I'm sorry.
92, fall of 92. But then my wife had to have a hip replaced, so when we came home in 93, she had her hip replaced. Then we went back to Texas and sold out down there and come home. We was home for Christmas in 93 here.
I see. Now, Ed, I understand you attended some reunions then of the USS Dickman.
Yeah, I did. I think the first one we attended was we were invited, but we never went because of the financial strain. When you got kids you're raising and you're not making big money, it costs to go there and back. But anyways, we attended our first in '74. That was in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's 74, yeah. Then we went back again in, I think, 84 or something like that. And we had one in Detroit. This was in the 70s. I was still working. And I was co-chair of it. And I made candlestick holders for every table out of walnut. That was a door prize. And I had gotten 25 pounds in 5-pound bags of ground flour out of Holland, where they got that windmill, the grinds flour there.
The Dijon mill, right?
Huh?
Dijon mill?
Yeah, whatever. It's a windmill from
Right.
Holland that they brought over and put it together. And then I made some other stuff for it.
How many of the ship's crew of 320 would attend the reunions?
Well, I think the most I ever saw was 120. But you see, after I left the ship, they put more guns on, so they needed more crew. Somewhere in that time, I heard it was up to 530.
I see.
But the 320, I knew all their names, the rates they were, and what hole they slept in. I had a good memory those days.
Did you join any of the veterans organizations?
No, I never joined none of them because I'm a Mason and I just didn't think I had the time for it when I was working.
You were already pretty well occupied with Masonic Order.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I still have never joined any of them. I mean, I just stay with the Masons.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for participating in this interview with the Veterans History Project at the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. This is being done under the auspices of the History Department at Grand Valley State University. And we certainly want to thank you for your participation and your time involved in researching some through your photographs and material and your time at the interview here.
Well, I just appreciate you being able to do it.
Thank
able
you.
to get my little, I'd say, niche in history.
That's right. My name is Wally Erickson, as a photographer and interviewer. Thank you, Ed Jamros.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Ed, what are these ribbons here now?
Well, this is my discharge button, and this, I think, is my trip to Australia. And this is the European theater right here, because it's got 3 stars and made 3 invasions. And now I don't know what I get lost what this one is. Shut it off.
What is this document then, Ed?
This is the record of my service medals and so forth in the service. On the bottom here it shows where everything is. That bar with the A in it is American Defense Medal.
And this document?
This is my discharge. It says certification of discharge under honorable conditions. See, I was seasick so much in service that and I had a bad back going in and I had a bad back coming out. So they just give me this one and I'm satisfied with it. They told I could get one that says honorable on it. I mean, different discharge, but I said, this is the way I went through it, so this is what I got.
And this document?
This document is the back side of my discharge, and it showed everywhere I was on board ship or going to school or whatever, right all in here. And it shows that that's my thumbprint there. And it says I'm not physically fit to re-enlist.
What is this photograph of, Ed?
This is the ship that I was on for over 3 years. When I was on it, it didn't have this 40-millimeter gun nest up here. We had it in the stern, and that's why I slept underneath it when it was on the stern there. But it was 525 feet long and I think about 175 feet wide.
How many tons was it? Do you recall?
No, I don't recall at all.
And this is the USS Joseph T. Dickman,
Yeah.
APA 13.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a amphibious
Personnel assault.
assault
First
vessel.
wave. Hit.
What is this certificate then, Ed?
You going?
Yes, we're on.
Yeah. Go ahead. This is my shell back certificate when I crossed the equator the second time. This was in the Pacific Ocean in January of '43 on our way to Australia. With all the troops that MacArthur used to push north in his campaign to oust the Japanese.
Okay, Ed, now this is your high school graduation
Yep,
photograph?
that's my picture of me when I was in 1936 in May. We got out early because of the Depression, no money to run to school, but that was my picture of me. That was my first real suit I had, and there was 22 in the graduation class.
And what school was this?
That was Brighton High School, Brighton, Michigan.
Okay. What is this photograph then, Ed?
This was taken after I graduated a short while. It was on my dad's farm in Brighton there. We were living in Green Oak Township there, 5 miles from Brighton, 5 miles from South Line, 5 miles from Whitmore Lake, and 5 miles from New Hudson. All little burgs. That was taken on whatever island the Statue of Liberty is. Because I remember the seawall around it there. It was in the fall because I dressed blues.
And this is you in your uniform.
Mm-hmm. It's me in uniform. What?
Okay, and this photograph?
Yeah, this photograph looks like it was taken aboard our ship because I'm on it. I'm right here, right in this back center. And the other ships are around there, so it had to be taken in some friendly port where somebody could have use of a camera. I won't say nothing.